Good morning, my friends. How's everybody doing this morning? I hope you're well and you got a chance to spend some time with the Lord. I have a word for you today that I just wanted to share, and I hope it's an encouragement to you. Um, the Lord does so many things for us that are miraculous, especially if you know Jesus Christ as your Savior. And so many times we get something and God does something and we know it's from Him and no one else could have done it. And we just go, wow, thank you so much, Lord. Thank you so much. We're so ecstatic. But then later on, we go through another trial and then we forget what God has done for us in the past. And I just wanted to encourage you to write down the wonderful things that the Lord does for you. Take a notebook or write on your computer or on your phone. It doesn't matter, whatever works for you. But I want to encourage you, try to do that and try to read from it frequently. And especially read from it during times when you're going through a trial and your faith is waning and you're looking at circumstances, because, we see things with our eyes, but we just can't always see what's going on in heaven. And a lot of times if you can read what God's done, it'll build your faith back up so you can stand and pray with God and partner with God to bring heaven to earth. The disciples, ran into all that themselves. They had a hard time. You know, Jesus had just done some miracles. He had fed like 5,000 people, and he fed 4,000 people, all with like just small little boys' lunch. And the disciples were like, how are we supposed to feed everybody? But yet God created the miracles. And I wanted to read you out of chapter 16. Jesus was talking about the leaven of the Pharisees, and right away the disciples said, oh, it's because we have no bread. But if they really understood God, it would be like, why are you even asking this question? Because I just did these two big miracles, and why would you think that? So let me just read Matthew. It's chapter 16, and it starts with verse 5. And it says, now when his disciples had come to the other side, they'd forgotten to take bread. Then Jesus said to them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it's because we have taken no bread. But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, oh, you of little faith, why do you reason amongst yourselves, because you brought no bread? Do you not understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you took up? Nor the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets you took up? How is it you do not understand that I do not speak to you concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees? So this isn't just us, but even the disciples went through it, and they even had Jesus with them. And, when we look at the Old Testament back in Deuteronomy chapter 6, Moses had just given the commandments. And then they were also then commanded to write these things on your forehead and, on your wrists, and tell your children, and put it on your gates and put it on your doorposts, because he knew that man would forget, the commandments, and that we would forget the miraculous things God had done. So this is just something that's part of man. But to kind of counteract that, I would encourage you, number 1, stay in the Word, because that's where His promises are. But number 2, get that notebook together. Write down things when God does stuff, and when you're going through something tough, take that out, start reading it. Start reading His Word until you build your faith back up, and then you can pray for things to happen. Sometimes things don't happen. We look back in David's time, and he had sinned with Bathsheba. He slept with Bathsheba, and they had a child. And then God's punishment was to take the child. But David spent all that time praying and fasting and pleading with God and asking forgiveness and all of that. And, he did what was right. He was going to contend with God and see if God would change his mind on it. And apparently it was just God's will. And so the baby was taken up to heaven. And but then David washed his face, and he dressed himself, And he got up and he went on with things. So when he went through such a horrible time of losing a child, he sought God, and it just wasn't going to happen. But he didn't get bitter, and he didn't, not forgive God. He just said, okay, that's God's will. Now I need to stand up and move on with the things with God. So, yes, sometimes things don't happen. But I got to say, like David, we need to not stop, you know, petitioning God and being with God and partnering with God and hearing Him and standing on what He says. So that's my encouragement to you today. Get that notebook out, start writing down the things that God has answered for you, and stand on those things and build your faith and partner with God. All right, talk to you soon.